Good morning. As promised, I am coming to you today with my, I don't know if it's a haul. Is it a haul? Here, let me adjust this just a little bit. I don't know if this is considered a haul, but maybe. So, as I talked about in my last video, my Redbird vintage unboxing video, which is now up if you guys want to see it. This is a 1970s, dig that avocado green, sewing kit, probably by Singer. I never did look for the mark. I should look for the mark. Singer made these, Bacall's made these, like everybody made these. And the reason I kind of collect them is because they don't actually make them anymore. And what I mean by that is they still make a similar product, but if you look, see that? These older ones, these fixtures are metal. On the newer ones, they're plastic. So when they break, you can't do this, which kind of makes a portable sewing kit, obsolete if you can't actually port it, right? If it's not actually portable. So I bought this yesterday. As I said in the previous video, I was just going to do like an unboxing of it, like I've done before with like the sewing machine and other stuff. And my phone had died. So I was like, all right, well, let me charge my phone. And then by the time the phone was charged, the Redbird vintage box was here, and I couldn't wait for that. But I also couldn't wait for this because I have the attention span of a golden retriever. So I went through this, and I'm glad I did because it was really dirty. And there were tons of like rusty needles, one of which I actually put into my finger, all over it. And like pins that had come out of the packaging and all that. So what I did was I just cleaned the trays. I cleaned everything up a little bit, but I put them actually back like basically right where they were. So when we go through the levels of this is actually what was in that level. All I've done to it is clean the tray, and there was some dust and stuff on them. As I was saying in the other video, it kind of seemed like something fuzzy was living in here. But I didn't find any like mouse poop or anything, but I can definitely see signs that stuff was chewed. Like some of the thread was chewed, and you can see some of the wooden thread spools were chewed. So something was keeping itself warm in here. But there wasn't a lot of mouse poop or anything, so I'm not really sure what it was. So let us begin. Okay. Oh, and by the way, before we start, I just want to show you guys this sweater and tell you a little story about it. So I found this in the thrift store, and this was an extra large. And then a couple, sweaters over was the exact one in red. And these are the vintage kind that zip up the back. I love these. And so I, of course, grabbed this because it was my size. And then I saw the other one, and it said extra large petite. And I thought, well, that won't fit me. But I held them up, and they're the same sweater. In fact, when you look at the labels, it's the same company, but they must have been made years apart because the fonts and the styling of the branding had changed dramatically, but it was the same company name. And they're 100% acrylic, which makes me think 50s, 60s, maybe even 70s. But I just really love them, and I love this color. And the lesson of that story is if you go to a thrift store and you find something you like, but it's not in your size area, look at it anyway, because what happens in thrift stores is people pull stuff out and they don't put it back where they got it. They walk around the store with it and then they just stick it someplace. This has happened to me a million times. Oh, and another little pro tip. If you ever get a set of pearls and they're like this is a choker set and they're just too tight on your neck and you're like, oh man, I wasted, whatever, $5 on Amazon for flapper pearls. Bracelet. Wrap them around your wrist. They make a nice dangly, cutie little bracelet. Obviously, don't do this with grandma's vintage pearls that you inherited because they might slip off your wrist. But for like, hey, man, if you went to a party, last year, like 2019, and you dressed as a flapper and you bought some pearls at Amazon and they weren't quite right, bracelet. You can even kind of shorten these and actually make them into a bracelet. But there's my pro tip. So, first level of this was fabulous array of thread. So I'm going to show you some of the key points because A lot of this thread is just like this stuff. Like this is dual duty thread. You can buy this at Joann's right now. But then other parts of this, oh, and buttons were in here as usual. But some other parts of this that I thought were very interesting. And this is why I always say this is like archaeology for women who sew. This was some woman's life. All of these colors and things, they meant something to her. We look at them and go, oh, you know, it's a pretty color. But they meant something to her. So here are some highlights, what we got going on in here. And some of this might go on Etsy. We have a never used, unopened spool of lily white thread. Now, can you see that? It was 10 cents for this spool, wood spool. This is 100% cotton, I believe. It's mercerized cotton. And that to me was fascinating, that this never got used. And right next to that was, interestingly enough, white thread by by this company that I've actually, Star Mercerized, never heard of them. Again, beautiful, beautiful old vintage spool. And this was possibly the most fascinating thing to me. Fruit of the Loom thread. I mean, you guys know I'm old, and I don't remember Fruit of the Loom thread, so I have no idea how old this is. But this says it was polyester, so it can't be that old. Who knew, right? And then there's this. This just has such a super cool vintage label. And look at that red. I'm keeping this. I'll use that. And then there was this. Remember my Talon zipper haul? Look at this. It's Talon thread in a super kind of strange forest green. And here's another one. This is another Talon, but different labeling, right? So later in the life of Talon zippers, this is what their labeling looked like. Kind of cool brown. Two of the threads that I found in here that I thought were particularly beautiful. Oh, here's another one I forgot to show you. This must be really old because see this spool? They don't do these spools anymore. They haven't done these spools actually in forever. The spools became straighter like this. In fact, these two are probably my favorites. Look at those colors. They're on wooden spools. In fact, someone told me that sometimes the spools are actually cork. They're cork from the tree, so they feel like wood, but they're actually cork. I'm wondering if that's what that is. And then just another little wooden spool. She must like the color green. There's a lot of green thread. Fine with me. I like green myself. So in here was also some really weird miscellaneous stuff like actual chalk, not tailor's chalk, but chalk for your chalkboard. And these little tiny spools that have never been used. There's 3 of them so far. And these are probably going to go up on the Etsy page. So there's a really beautiful blue. There's a really beautiful brown. There's a really lovely purple. So these might go up on the Etsy store. There were also buttons, the majority of which were not that interesting. There were only 2. They were just white shirt buttons, but there were 2 that I really liked. This one, she liked green. And this rather cool, probably not vintage, little metal button that I thought was totally cool. Also in the top, which was fun. Oh, let me tell you the story of this. Okay, so there were two bobbins. And the one bobbin looked like something had chewed on it. So I was trying to take the thread off of it just to save the bobbin. And whatever it is that actually, there was like a chunk taken out of the bobbin. It had bitten into the bobbin. So I was like, all right, we'll retire that bobbin. But here's a bobbin with some yellow thread, so I'll use that for something. And then I found these. These are just 2 really dinky, probably just polyester thread. But again, with the green, she really liked green. And then this really pretty pale pink that looks very white on camera, but trust me, it's a pale pink. All right, so she also had a pair of these, which the funny thing is I've kind of wanted these. They're not an expensive item. I just keep not buying them. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. These are the little crane scissors, I think they're called, right? Crane scissors. I always wanted a pair of these, and I thought they were really cool. And then there was some interesting ephemera that was floating around like this. Don't know what this was, but... And then the bottom of one of the thread spools, so I'll have to figure out which one that goes to. So then, that was the first level. And that's really all that was in there, was just a lot of thread. And it was all thrown in there. It wasn't really organized the way I did it. So the next level has several truly fabulous items in it, including, so I don't know what my karma is that I keep getting these, but like more. So you know what I'm going to do? Stop that right now. There we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put these into my Etsy store with the other packs I have, and I'll just add these as a bonus. Because again, when you look at these, it's like, this is the 80s. Look at that packaging. That's the 80s. This, maybe 90s, maybe 70s, who knows? But definitely some old packaging. Let me take this whole bin thing out of here so we can take a look at it. Okay. All right, so there's that. Then we had more sewing needles, which I'm going to keep. I always need sewing needles. These very strange, I guess these are, they look really large. I'm thinking they're yarn needles or crewel needles. This, which just cracked me up to no end. It's polylastic. This is so funny to me. Like, this was 49 cents at JM Fields. Okay, JM Fields was a department store that has been out of business, I think, since the 80s, which means that this is at the very least from the 80s, maybe longer. This, of course, is possibly one of my favorite finds in here. I apparently have both Elastic Karma and vintage, what is this called? I can't remember what it's called. What is it called? Did they call it? No, they just called Zip, so it's not even the real name. What the heck am I thinking of? Velcro. Velcro. That's it. So this is like oh, and this is from Bradley's. Oh my God, guys. Look at, first of all, look how yellow it is. But see this? Bradley's? Anybody who's as old as me remembers Bradley's. They went out of business in the 80s also. So here's another company. All this just vintage ephemera stuff. And I'm going to work up to the best piece of vintage ephemera in here. And then here was, I thought this was so cool. It was a shame the pins were open. I think these are the pins that were leaking all over, because I don't think she actually opened this. I think this came apart. And that's why the pins were all over the place. Now, these and some other stuff in here are definitely going into the Etsy shop. So these are yarn needles, never opened, amazing, amazing ephemera. And these are from, I've never even heard of this company. True? Oh, it's Two Guys. Another department store in my area that is, Two Guys has been out of business since the 70s. They went out of business mid-70s. So these are at least mid-70s. She also apparently had one of these. If you guys don't know what this is for hook rugs. I'll probably put these together because these probably were supposed to be together. A crochet hook. This is just like such a generic crochet hook. I'll probably keep it even though I don't really crochet anymore. This would be good for some, you know, for some kind of a project. And of course, because no trip to, you know, me purchasing anything related to sewing would not be complete unless there were buttons in there. So some buttons. I thought this was nice. It's a whole set. So, and these aren't particularly old. These were made in Japan, and but they were originally 49 cents a pack and made in Japan. Probably not super vintage, but I might sell them. Maybe. I have so many white buttons. It's the last thing I need is more white buttons. So these might go up. So maybe. We'll see. But the reason I bought this kit, besides that I like to collect these kits, was when they put the video on Facebook, this was in the picture. Now, we've all seen these. They're not so much rare, but this side's even better. Is that the creepiest looking mom you have ever seen in your life? The majority of the needles are gone. There are still some in there, as you can see. But, well, and I like the look of that graphics. It's kind of cool. And then there's the bottom. I don't want the needles to fall out. But the reason I really like this was the mom. Look at her. How creepy is she? She is like super, and even the kid kind of, man, I wouldn't want to meet that kid in a dark alley. Talk about like, let the right one in. All right. Sorry. So those are the 2 bins. And then in the bottom, there really wasn't much. So one of the things in the bottom, nothing to write home about. These used to be given out if you gave a donation to paralyzed veterans. But, you know, the nice thing is it's just a really basic little sewing kit. So this, I think, is actually going to be thrown in my car because you never know. And it's got, let's see, it's got all kinds of thread. It's got this weird thimble, the kind that doesn't cover your whole finger. Little scissors, some safety pins, because I need more safety pins, measuring tape, some, you know, shirt buttons. This has needles in it. You know, so it's not fabulous. It's not horrible. Like I said, nothing to write home about. My mom used to get these all the time because she gave to every charity. So she got on a list. Every charity was like, hey, send something to her. So I'm just going to put that in my car. But then there was this. Now, unfortunately, one pair of the shoelaces is gone. But they're boot shoelaces. But the reason I love them is the weird skulking guy in the corner. I mean, like, it's such, like, he's got a wheelbarrow, but he also looks like the guy who might be burying bodies under his house's foundation. I mean, really look at him. And, I mean, these were originally, well, these were 39 cents, and wherever she got them, they marked them down to 35. So you saved a whole 4 cents on 2 pairs of these. Unfortunately, obviously, one of the pairs has been lost to time, but still, I'm always fascinated by this kind of weird vintage, like fonts and packaging and stuff. I think they're super cool in their own very weird way. So I'm not sure. These aren't really quite worth selling on Etsy, but you know, when people buy things from me on Etsy, I always like send like little ephemera pieces because I always, you know, I get all this like weird stuff like this. Like, you know, it's weird, but like I just like do stuff with it, right? I like add it to the packaging. I tie some ribbon through it. I make it look like whatever, you know, I just try and make everything a little more cute. And so I think this will probably end up ephemera. I think this is going to end up some kind of ephemera too, because it's so groovy. Look how groovy that is. But, and like I said, look, this was never open. You can see this pulled away. So it was never really open, and these pins were everywhere. And obviously there's not 150 of them in this package anymore. But the packaging itself is kind of cool. And it says discount price. There you go. So it was actually on sale. So I'm glad that she was frugal like I am. So anyway, guys, that is the video for today. And quick update on the bread box. Okay, so I told you I was going to do the bread box. And I really do want to do the bread box. There's only one problem. I'm working with Rust-Oleum. If you've ever worked with the Rust-Oleum spray, you know it's incredibly temperamental. It has to have the right temperature. And it has been so cold in New Jersey that I am waiting for one of those unseasonably warm days to spray this bread box, let it dry, and, you know, really get dry. Because if you do it when it's too cold, it doesn't really take. It feels really tacky. When it dries, it'll come right off. If you've ever had this experience, you know what I'm talking about. So I promise you I am working on the bread box. Same with the sewing machine. In fact, I'm going to call that guy today. I'm going to find out if you have to make an appointment, like what his deal is with like dropping off sewing machines so I can get the sewing machine fixed. And that's it. So until next time, watch my Redbird Vintage unboxing. I got really beautiful stuff. And there's only one thing I didn't like, which you guys will see. And yeah, so I'll see you guys in the next one, okay? Bye.